We dodge it. So, in order to get ourselves ready, we have to have goals and prescription goals. Let's talk about it. How do we prescribe stuff? Let's get into our first part here, setting goals. Okay? It's going to be the first part of our program. Now that we set it all up, now that we know what we're looking for, periodization, we know what it is, right? We're actually going to go ahead and figure out how do we test for some of this. Okay? How do we test for it? How do we test for it? Okay? So we have to have a conversation. We got to talk to our fighter. Fighters got to talk with the trainers, the coach. The head coach talks to the other coaches. We have to corroborate. All right? We have to corroborate. Then, if I'm coaching, if I'm the athlete, I look in the mirror and I say, this has got to be a little bit better. This has to be different. This has to be tweaked in order for me to get to my goal. We can't stay there the same. It's got to be a little bit different. So if coach says we need to work more of our upper body strength, right? If we have a running coach that says we have to work more on our sprint techniques, I need to then look at myself, be like, okay, I agree. Here's what we need to do. Come back, have a discussion with the coach, whatever it might be. All right. For fighting, we need that whole team in agreement. But if you're coaching, you need your own qualifiers too. That can be looking at fights like I did with everybody that I trained for fights. Trying to work with Jesse in those cases. Look at old fight footage. Going to fights. Finding some on YouTube. And I got to see what the competition is like. I've had coaches that look at other people that I'm going to fight against. Or what you could do is go in and look at the records that are out there. If you're training someone that wants to get better at Olympic lifting or powerlifting, okay, someone that wants to get better at powerlifting, they need to see what the records are so that we can start looking at 1 rep maximum. All right? We need visuals and we need hard data. All of that comes into play. So a fighter in a team, okay, says you got to be able to fight going backwards. You want to be able to move your head a lot, right? We need to stay focused. What we did for Mark on his training camp, right? My assessment was very similar. And I wanted to improve his multi-directional strength. Because as a longer, taller guy, right? And also me, myself, being longer and taller, I recognize this maybe a little bit sooner. It's like, yeah, if guys get into your chest, they're going to want to stay there. And what I mean is if you have a longer, taller fighter, someone's going to want to stay there. If they're shorter, in order to beat the longer, taller fighter. So I wanted to say, hey, let's work multi-directionally, laterally, backwards, all these different directions so that we can be optimized for strength no matter where we go. All right. And we needed to work body to body, just having another body leaning on Mark. Because again, all about that physical contact. With Chris, we wanted to work the legs. I wanted him to be very powerful inside the pocket. Of course, this is what the team also wanted. He told me he wanted to avoid the autopilot phenomenon. And what we decided was let's find that sweet spot in our training to where we hit our stride. And and we got it to where Chris himself could kind of dictate when he turned it on, when he not turned it off, but he was able to conserve his energy and utilize it well, weaponize his energy. Imagine being able to do that in the course of a long race. Imagine being able to do that, you know, whenever you needed it, being able to use your metabolism to your advantage. That's what we did. Okay? It was all about assessing needs. So we have to test for certain goals. If you have a goal of needing to perform at, inside, you want to get a better vertical for pickup basketball or volleyball, right? You need to test that. We need to test your 1 rep max, or in my gym, your 3 rep max, right? We need to test that. We need to test your vertical. We need to look at time under tensions, take a guess and see, okay, you're pretty type 1-ish. You're a fast twitch athlete. What can we do to maximize your training? How do we make it better? Okay? Never forget the why. Right? Need assessments, use hard data, and we don't have the data, we got to test for it. Right? So let's check it out right now. Let's talk about some strength standards that we can use. Well, let's talk about some all-around standards. So, interestingly enough, and I did just leak it, I do have strength standards inside of my gym. I have strength to weight ratios. All right. So I have a handout that shows my strength to weight ratios, right? Full disclosure. And this is the type of gauge that I have on my athletes. So when I saw Mark when he came in before camp, it was already clear to me that we need to have certain type of strength ratios going in so that okay, we know that we're doing 6 of this type of exercise. That means we're at this level. We are good. Okay? I know theoretically he can do X amount of weight 3 times on the deadlift. Perfect. His legs are right where we need to be, and we don't have to focus on power. Maybe now we need to focus on that upper body for 10 reps, 20 reps, whatever it might be, or an RPE or an intensity of that equivalent. Okay? So a time under tension of 3 minutes. We could do a vertical, a broad jump, a push-up test, which I love to do, the crunch test, and planking is always. Look, all of my fighters that I've trained with, they've been great at many of these. So let's go over it, right? All competitors have their differences. Some are great at some and weaker at others, right? Vertical tests are all about power in the lower body, right? And here's the method. I won't go over the method pound for pound. There's a few ways that you can do it without having the vertical stick measurement. I've done it in my gym where I had a young girl come in with her family and she wanted to increase her vertical, and we measured it using tape and a tape measure pretty accurately. And then we proceeded to prescribe some exercises for her to work on, right? Broad jumping. Think about the broad jump where you're starting in one spot and you're recoiling the body into that sweet spot, right? That amortization zone, and then exploding from there into an explosive move. So it's all about that power stroke and that bound from a singular point with great mechanics from a standstill. Okay? Push-ups, what I really want you guys to emphasize that this is just a 1 minute type thing. Okay? This is a 1 minute test wherein you crank out about 18. All right? That's it. Crunches. The first minute, if we're way above 25, we're good to go. Air squats. Okay? We're about 20. We want, on average, I'm seeing most fighters and competitors probably about more than 2 minutes, but on average, a minute 15 seconds. And again, that's just average. So these are just some great testing methods that we can just start performing today. You can do the treadmill stress test where you're looking for the lactate threshold that you might have. So you need to also have your heart rate monitor on. You need to have a way of measuring that heart rate while doing a repetitive move. So you can't really do it while you're doing a weightlifting session. I mean, you could, but you want to do something that you know the heart rate's going to climb and it's really controllable. So you use your treadmill, right? You can test mobility. That's always something that I say is highly important. A great resource for this is Rocky Snyder, CSCS. He has a book, Return to Center. He does a lot of assessments in that book where he is checking for deviations from the center, the optimized center movement plane of the body. Basically, looking for compensations inside of your mobility that lead to poorer movement patterns. And it's a great read. It's a good practice that coaches can do, that you can do for yourself if you're not a coach, that test your mobility in all these great planes. So you don't need to go out like I did and learn all about Pilates. You can kind of assess yourself, assess others. And of course, treating it takes more expertise, but it's great. It's very important to test for mobility. You can test for aerobic thresholds and anaerobic thresholds. We're usually thinking of aerobic thresholds being right around 100 to 120-ish beats per minute, depending on your age, of course, and anaerobic thresholds being 70% of your max. All right. So 55, 65, 165, I should say, and 155 beats per minute. Okay. Remember that your anaerobic threshold is where your VO becomes, you're charting your heart rate and your VO, the two split at a point. Okay. And you considerably need more oxygen than you can in your body, and your heart rate starts to steady off. That is your lactate threshold or anaerobic threshold. You can test for that. Like I said before, you probably should use a treadmill because that way you know, okay, this is really easy. I can take some more abuse, punch that treadmill up to 10. Right? I remember doing my ergonomics treadmill stress test in college, and it's pretty funny because you're tasked with a lot of other students in class to just destroy yourself on a treadmill. Like, that's the point. And you're hooked up to all this stuff and you have electrodes on your body, or yeah. And the whole point is to just gas out on this treadmill, and it's amazing because you didn't think for the life of you that you would want to be on a treadmill going 9 or 10. And just when you're supposed to stop, your instinct is to stop. Nope. You got to up it a little bit more just to make sure that you're sustained at a high enough heart rate and your heart rate doesn't drop. So it's like, okay, I'm getting tired. Punch it up more. So it's pretty good. That's one of the, I think everybody should try to take that treadmill test. You could do it yourself. It's pretty easy to notice when your heart rate goes up on that test. So it's a great test.